You know the specific silence of a house that is hiding a sin. On the morning I turned 18, I found a photocopy of my father's will with my name crossed out in red ink. They expected tears, but they forgot my grandmother left me a trigger, not an inheritance. I called her lawyer and told him to sell the house in 12 hours. By the time they started screaming, a stranger owned the roof over their heads. My name is Hadley Cox. And for the first few seconds after I opened my eyes on the morning of my 18th birthday, I forgot that I was living in a house that wanted me gone. The morning light of October 14th filtered through the sheer curtains of my bedroom window, casting long, pale rectangles on the carpet. It was a Tuesday in Stonebridge, Ohio. Tuesdays were usually reserved for the mundane rhythm of garbage trucks and school buses, the low hum of suburban maintenance that lulled you into believing everything was permanent. But this silence was different. It was heavy. It felt deliberate. Like the air in a room where an argument had just ended, or perhaps where one was about to begin. I lay there for a moment, listening. The house was 3,000 square feet of modern farmhouse architecture, a structure built on appearances, and usually it was loud. My stepmother, Patrice, was a woman who made noise simply by existing. Her heels on the hardwood, her voice echoing on speakerphone, the constant clatter of her rearranging things that did not need rearranging. My half-sister Belle was a vortex of digital noise, TikTok sounds, and slammed doors. But today, the hallway outside my door was a vacuum. There were no balloons taped to my door frame. There was no smell of cinnamon rolls or bacon wafting up the stairs. I did not expect a party. I had stopped expecting those when I was 12. But the total absence of acknowledgement felt like a physical weight. It was not just that they had forgotten. It felt as if they were holding their breath. I rolled out of bed and checked my phone. There was a single notification on the lock screen. It was a text message from Belle, sent at 7:30 in the morning. Chilled today. Sis. House is handling important business. We will do dinner or something later. I stared at the screen. Chilled today. The phrasing was casual, dismissive. Yet, the second sentence carried a weird bureaucratic weight. House is handling important business. Not dad is busy or mom is out. The house was busy. The entity itself was rejecting me. It was a command disguised as a sisterly update. It sounded like a door being closed in my face, gently enough to not cause a bruise, but firmly enough to lock. I pulled on a hoodie and walked downstairs. The stairs in our house were hardwood, polished to a fault, slippery if you were wearing socks. I moved quietly. I had learned to move quietly years ago in this family. Visibility was often a liability. If they didn't see you, they couldn't criticize you. If they didn't hear you, they couldn't ask you for something. The kitchen was empty. The morning sun hit the quartz countertops, making them gleam with a sterile, cold brightness. On the center island where a birthday cake might have sat in a different version of my life, there was only a yellow sticky note stuck to the granite. Lawyer Hart late. Don't make a fuss. My stomach tightened. The handwriting was my father's sharp, jagged. Hurried. Graham Caldwell did not go to lawyers. My father was a man who believed legal paperwork was a scam designed to drain his wallet. He managed his construction business with handshakes and invoices he typed up himself. He avoided suits. He avoided offices. For him to be meeting a lawyer at 8 in the morning on a Tuesday, something was not just wrong. It was catastrophic. Or it was calculated. And the name Hart. I knew that name. Evan Hart. He had been my grandmother's lawyer. He was the man who had read her initial will 5 years ago. The one that had left everyone disappointed because the bulk of the estate had vanished into a trust that nobody could touch. Why was Graham meeting with him now? A cold prickle of intuition walked up my spine. It wasn't fear exactly. It was the sensation you get when you realize you are the punchline of a joke you haven't heard yet. I turned away from the kitchen and looked down the hallway toward my father's home office. The door, usually kept shut to keep the cat out, was cracked open by 2 inches. I should have made coffee. I should have gone back upstairs and waited for the dinner or something Belle had promised. But the silence pulled me. It was magnetic. I pushed the office door open. The room smelled of cedar and stale coffee. Graham's desk was a chaotic landscape of blueprints and invoices. But right in the center, cleared of all other debris, sat a single document. It was not an original. The paper had the slight gray tint of a photocopy. I walked around the desk. I did not want to look. But I could not stop myself. It was a draft of a last will and testament. I recognized the header. I recognized the font. But it was the markings that stopped my heart. The document had been aggressively edited. A thick red marker had been used to slash through paragraphs, the ink bleeding slightly into the cheap copy paper. I leaned closer, my hands gripping the edge of the mahogany desk to keep them from shaking. I found my name on page 3. Hadley Cox. A single red line was drawn horizontally through my name. It was not a hesitant line. It was pressed down hard, starting before the H and dragging violently past the X, as if the person holding the pen wanted to ensure the name was not just removed, but obliterated. In the margins in my father's distinctive blocky handwriting were the words correct error. All residuary estate to Patrice Caldwell and Belle Caldwell. Below that, another note. Finalize immediately. October 14th. My birthday. They were not just disinheriting me. They were doing it as a rite of passage. They were rushing to a lawyer on the morning I became a legal adult to ensure that the moment I had any potential claim to independence, it was severed. The important business had mentioned was the business of erasing me. They thought I would cry. That was the script I'd been given for 18 years. I was the emotional one, the sensitive one, the one who tried too hard to be loved by a father who saw me as a remnant of a past life, and a stepmother who saw me as an obstruction to her budget. They expected me to see this, to collapse, to wait for them to come home so I could beg for an explanation. They expected me to apologize for existing. But as I stared at the red ink, something strange happened. I didn't cry. My heart rate didn't even accelerate. Instead, a profound icy calm settled over me. It was a sensation I had never felt before. Like a switch flipping in a circuit breaker. The emotions simply cut out. It was a survival mechanism. Instant and absolute. The part of me that was a daughter, the part that wanted a father, died in that quiet office. What remained was something else entirely. I remembered the last time I saw my grandmother. June. She was in the hospice wing, frail as a bird. Her skin translucent. She had grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. They think they own the world. Hadley, she had whispered. But they only own what I let them hold. Wait for the clock. I hadn't understood it then. I had thought it was the morphine talking or the ramblings of a woman who missed her own time. Wait for the clock. I looked at the digital clock on my father's desk. It was 8:15 in the morning. I was 18. I turned around, leaving the office exactly as I had found it. I did not scream. I did not throw the paperweight through the window. I walked out, closed the door to the exact 2 inches gap it had been before, and walked back up the stairs to my room. My laptop was sitting on my duvet. I sat down and opened it. The screen glowed to life, illuminating the dim room. For 5 years, I had a bookmark saved in my browser. It was a secure portal for a private wealth management firm in Chicago. Grandma June had given me the login credentials on a slip of paper inside a birthday card when I turned 13. Don't lose this, she had written. And don't look at it until you have to. I had logged in a few times over the years just to see the interface. It had always shown a static screen: beneficiary Hadley Cox. Status minor custodian Evan Hart. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed in the username. I typed in the password. I hit enter. The screen refreshed. The little spinning wheel turned for 3 seconds that felt like 3 years. Then the dashboard loaded. The interface had changed. The gray banner at the top was now a deep authoritative blue. The text that had been static for half a decade was gone, replaced by new bold lines of code that had triggered automatically at midnight. Client Hadley Cox role sole trustee status. Active effective date October 14th. I stared at the word sole trustee. I clicked on the tab labeled Assets. The list populated. It was a long list. Stock, bond, diversified portfolios. But at the very top, listed as the primary asset of the June Caldwell Irrevocable Trust, was the address I was currently sitting in. 1402 Oakwood Drive, Stonebridge, Ohio. My father lived here. Patrice redecorated here. Belle filmed her videos here. They called it their house. They acted as if they owned the foundation, the walls, and the roof. But they didn't. They never had. Grandma June had placed the house in the trust years before she died. My father had been allowed to live here as a tenant at will under the guardianship of the trust, provided he maintained the property. He likely believed that once I turned 18, the trust would dissolve or transfer control to him. That was probably what he was yelling at Evan Hart about right now, trying to bully the lawyer into signing over the deed, trying to use the will to override the trust. He didn't understand how an irrevocable trust worked. It was ironclad. And as of 8 hours and 15 minutes ago, I was the only person on earth who could decide who slept in the master bedroom. I reached for my phone. My hands were steady. I dialed the number for Evan Hart's direct line, a number I had memorized from the letterhead Grandma used to keep in her Bible. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Evan Hart speaking? A voice answered. He sounded tired, wary. He was probably sitting across from my father at this very second, listening to Graham scream about fairness and rights. I didn't say hello. I didn't identify myself. I didn't ask why my father was trying to erase me. Sell the house in 12 hours, I said. Can you do it? There was a silence on the other end of the line. It lasted for 2 beats. I could hear the faint sound of a pen tapping against a desk in the background. Hadley. His voice was lower now, softer. I saw the draft. Mr. Hart. I saw the red ink. I know what they are trying to do. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat. Metallic. Devoid of the trembling that should have been there. They want everything. So I want to liquidate the asset today. Now, Hart did not gasp. He did not tell me to calm down or to think it over. He did not treat me like a teenager having a tantrum. I am currently in a meeting with your father, Hart said. His voice measured professional, carrying a hint of dark amusement. He is demanding I release the title to him. He believes that since you are 18, the guardianship period is over and the property defaults to the next of kin. He's wrong. I said he is very wrong. Hart agreed. The trust stipulates that upon your 18th birthday, you assume full control. You have the unilateral right to hold, manage, or liquidate any asset within the trust without the consent of any resident. Can we sell it today? I asked again. I don't want a listing. I don't want open houses. I want it gone. I want cash. I heard Hart shift in his chair. There is a buyer. A developer named Rafael Laredo. He has been making inquiries about the lot for 3 years. He knows the zoning laws better than the city council. He offers cash and he closes fast. I told him the property was not available. Call him, I said. Tell him it is available, but only if he can close by the end of the business day. Hart was silent for another moment. Then he spoke and I could hear the smile in his voice. The smile of a lawyer who had been waiting a long time to deliver a verdict. Your grandmother, June, Hart said quietly, wrote that specific liquidation clause for this exact moment. She suspected that on the day you came of age, they would try to take what wasn't theirs. I looked out the window. The suburban street was quiet. A neighbor was walking a golden retriever. The world looked normal. But inside this house, the timeline had just snapped. Do it, I said. I'll authorize everything through the portal. I'll prepare the paperwork, Hart said. Happy birthday, Hadley. I hung up the phone. I stood up and walked to my mirror. I looked at the girl in the reflection. She looked the same as she had yesterday. Same dark hair. Same pale eyes. But she wasn't the same yesterday. She was a daughter waiting for scraps of affection. Today she was the landlord. They had spent the morning scratching my name out of a will, thinking they were cutting me off from my future. They didn't realize that by waiting until today, they had handed me the match. They had tried to erase me on the very day they lost the right to stand on my floor. I looked at the clock. 8:20 in the morning. I had less than 4 hours to pack my life into a few boxes. By the time they came home to celebrate their victory, there would be a sold sign on the lawn and the locks would be changed. The silence in the house didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like the calm before a very necessary storm. People often ask if my family hated me. Hate would have been easier. Hate implies passion. Hate implies that you occupy space in someone's mind. They did not hate me. They simply resented the fact that I did not have the good grace to disappear when my mother did. My mother died when I was 6. I remember her as a scent of vanilla and old paper. A warmth that vanished too quickly to be anything more than a ghost limb. I still tried to flex on bad days. At the funeral, my father Graham wept until his eyes were swollen shut. He held my hand so tight my fingers turned white. He looked at the grave and swore to anyone who would listen and specifically to me that no one would ever take her place. He said our little unit was sacred. He held on to that sacred grief for exactly 4 months. Then came Patrice. She did not arrive like a villain. She arrived like a mandatory software update you click install on because you are tired of the notifications. She was efficient. She was loud. She brought casseroles and opinions on window treatments. Graham didn't fall in love. He just couldn't stand the silence of a house with only a grieving child in it. He needed noise to drown out the guilt. Patrice was excellent at noise. When they got married, I was 7. When Belle was born, I was 8. And somewhere between the wedding cake and the baby shower, my role in the house shifted tectonically. I was no longer the daughter. I was the prototype that had been discontinued. Patrice had a favorite phrase. It was her shield and her sword. You are the big sister, Hadley. You need to understand. I learned very quickly that understanding was a code word for losing. If Belle wanted the toy I was holding, I had to understand. If Belle needed the larger bedroom because her toys took up more space, I had to understand. If we couldn't afford a tutor for my math class because Belle's dance lessons cost $200 a month, I had to understand. The big sister yields to the little one, Patrice would say, smoothing my hair with a touch that felt more like she was checking for dust than offering affection. It is what good girls do. So, I became a good girl. I learned the physics of our household. Graham was the planet, Patrice was the gravity, and Belle was the moon. I was just space debris floating in the orbit, trying not to collide with anything. I learned that making noise was dangerous. If I laughed too loud, I was disrupting Belle's nap. If I cried, I was being dramatic and ungrateful. If I asked for something, I was selfish. The only time I was praised was when I made myself useful. By the time I was 14, I had internalized the idea that my rent for living in that house was my labor. I started working the day I was legally allowed to get a permit. I didn't work for pocket money. I worked to buy my right to be there. I spent my teenage years behind the counter of Northline Coffee, a local shop that smelled of burnt beans and despair. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning to open the store. I came home smelling of stale milk. I mowed lawns in the summer until my shoulders blistered. I babysat neighborhood kids who had more toys in their playrooms than I had ever owned in my life. I became a hoarder of small bills. 10. Once, I smoothed them out and kept them in a tin box under my bed, thinking they were my escape fund. But in the Caldwell house, money had a way of flowing upward. It started small. Graham would come into the kitchen looking harassed, holding a bill. "Hadley. Honey," he would say, rubbing the back of his neck. "Business is a little slow this month. I know you have that stash from the coffee shop. Could we borrow 100 just for the groceries? I will pay you back next week." He never paid me back. Then it got bigger. The borrowing stopped being a request and became an expectation. When the kitchen needed new quartz countertops because Patrice felt the old laminate was depressing her, the money came from the family pot. When I pointed out that I needed tires for the used sedan I had bought myself, Patrice sighed. "We are a team. Hadley," she said, looking at me with those wide, disappointed eyes. "Why do you always make it about you? Belle has her gymnastics tournament in Florida next month. That is an opportunity. Your tires can wait. Just drive carefully." I paid for the tires. I paid for my own school lunches. I paid for my own clothes. And when Belle turned 16 and wanted a car, Graham sat me down and gave me a long speech about how proud he was of my work ethic, and how it would be a beautiful gesture if I contributed my summer savings to help get Belle something safe. "She is your sister," he said. "She looks up to you." She didn't look up to me. She looked through me. But I gave them the money. $2,000 that I had scrubbed toilets and poured lattes to earn. Why did I do it? Because I was starving. I was starving for them to look at me and see a person, not a burden. I told myself that if I gave enough, if I filled every hole in their budget, if I smoothed every edge of their lives, eventually the balance would tip. Eventually, Graham would hug me and mean it. Eventually, Patrice would say thank you without adding a criticism. I thought I was buying love. I didn't realize I was just paying a tax on my own existence. The only person who saw the transaction for what it was happened to be the one person they couldn't control. My grandmother. June Caldwell. June was Graham's mother. But she looked at her son with the weary skepticism of a woman who had raised a disappointment. She lived in a small assisted living apartment on the other side of town. She didn't visit often. Patrice claimed June's perfume gave her migraines, but when she did, she was a hawk. June didn't talk much. She sat in the armchair in the corner of the living room, her hands resting on her cane, her eyes moving from Graham to Patrice to Belle and finally resting on me. One afternoon, about 6 months before she died, I was at her apartment. I was 17 then. I was exhausted. I had just worked a double shift at the coffee shop, and then come straight to her place to help her organize her medication. I was sitting on the floor, sorting pills into a plastic container. When June spoke, "How much did you give him this week?" she asked. I froze. "What do you mean?" "Grandma, your father," she said. Her voice was rasping but clear. "I saw the new golf clubs in his trunk. He didn't pay for those. And Patrice has a new handbag that costs more than my monthly rent. How much of your paycheck did they take?" "I just helped with the electric bill." Elite. "It was high this month." June leaned forward. She reached out and lifted my chin with the tip of her cane. It wasn't gentle, but it forced me to look at her. "You think you are earning your place?" she said. "You think if you are useful enough, they will keep you." Tears stung my eyes. I didn't want to admit she was right. "They are my family," I whispered. "They are parasites," June said. She didn't say it with anger. She said it like she was identifying a species of bug in the garden. And parasites do not love the host. They consume the host. She sat back, her eyes hard and bright. "I made a mistake with Graham," she said softly. "I gave him too much too soon. He never learned the weight of things. He only knows how to take. And that woman he married, she is a bottomless pit." I went back to sorting the pills. I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to believe that my dad was just stressed, that Patrice was just anxious, that deep down we were a normal family. Listen to me, Hadley, June said. Her voice dropped to a whisper, urgent and terrifying. I have arranged things. I have tied knots they cannot untie. But you have to be ready. Ready for what? For the day you stop giving, she said. The moment you close your wallet, they will show you their teeth. She grabbed my hand. Then her skin was like dry parchment paper, but her grip was iron. When you turn 18, she said, they will try to take it all. Not just the money, the house, the history. They will try to rewrite the past so that you were never part of it. They will try to make you invisible. Why? I asked. Why would they do that? Because you remind them of what they are not, June said. You work. They beg. You endure. They complain. You are the evidence of their failure, Hadley, and people destroy the evidence. I thought she was being dramatic. I thought she was an old woman bitter about her son's choices. I kissed her on the cheek and told her not to worry. She died 3 weeks later. At the funeral, Graham cried again. Patrice wore a black dress that was tastefully expensive and totally inappropriate for a woman who had called her mother-in-law a stubborn old witch every chance she got. Belle spent the service texting under the pew. I didn't cry. I felt a strange hollow panic. I felt like the only person who had ever truly seen me had just left the room, leaving me alone in the dark with the wolves. After the funeral, life went back to normal, or what passed for normal. Graham mentioned that June had left everything in a complicated trust, and that the lawyers were sorting it out. He complained about how difficult June was, even in death. He acted like the house we lived in was his inheritance, delayed only by paperwork. I kept working. I kept paying. I kept waiting for the love to kick in. But as my 18th birthday approached, the atmosphere in the house changed. It wasn't overt. It was a subtle tightening. Graham stopped asking me for money. Patrice stopped asking me to babysit. They stopped looking me in the eye. They became quiet. I thought maybe they were planning a surprise. A car. A party acknowledgement. I was so stupid. I was thinking like a daughter. I should have been thinking like a creditor. June was right. She had seen the map of their hearts better than I ever could. She knew that Graham wouldn't protect me. She knew that Patrice wouldn't accept me. She knew that the moment I became a legal adult, I became a threat. I stood in the center of my bedroom, surrounded by boxes I had packed in a frenzy over the last 2 hours, my entire childhood. The few scraps of it that were actually mine fit into 3 cardboard boxes and a duffel bag. The rest of the house was silent. The important business they were handling was the finalization of my eraser. I thought about the money I had given them, the thousands of dollars, the sweat, the time. I thought about the tires I didn't buy and the college trips I didn't take. I looked at the sticky note on the wall where I had tracked my savings goals for years. College fund. Escape fund. They had drained it all. But they had missed the one asset that mattered. I picked up the last box. It was light. It contained my mother's photo, few books, and the letter Grandma June had left for me in the trust documents. I wasn't leaving this house as a victim. I wasn't leaving as the poor stepdaughter who was kicked out. I was leaving as the owner who was closing the shop. I checked my watch. 10:30 in the morning. The developer, Raphael, would be here in an hour. I walked down the stairs for the last time as a resident. I didn't look at the photos on the wall. Photos of Belle winning trophies. Photos of Graham and Patrice on vacation in Cabo. Photos where I was conveniently absent or standing in the back out of focus. They hated that I didn't disappear. Well, I was about to grant their wish. I was going to disappear completely, but I was taking the roof with me. The phone felt hot against my ear. A physical lifeline connecting me to the only ally I had left in the world. Evan Hart's voice was not comforting in the traditional sense. It did not offer sympathy. Instead, it offered something far more valuable. It offered structural integrity. He began to speak and the words he used were precise, interlocking like the gears of a bank vault. I sat on the edge of my bed, my laptop open, typing as he spoke, transcribing the weapon he was handing me. Listen to me carefully. Hadley Hart said. You need to understand the architecture of what June built. This is not a standard inheritance. This is a fortress. He explained the difference between the paper my father was currently waving around in his office and the digital reality I was looking at on my screen. My father was operating under the laws of a last will and testament. A will is a request. It is a document that asks a probate court to transfer ownership after death. It is subject to contests, to delays, and most importantly, it only controls assets that are actually in the deceased person's name. Graham thinks the house belongs to him. Hart said he believes that because he pays the utilities and mows the lawn, he possesses the title. He is operating under a misconception that June allowed him to keep because it kept the peace. But the deed to 1402, Oakwood Drive does not belong to Graham Caldwell. It belongs to the June Caldwell Irrevocable Trust. I typed the word irrevocable. That word is the lock. Hart continued. Once June signed those papers 5 years ago, she removed the asset from her own estate and placed it into a separate legal entity. A trust is like a corporation. It lives on its own. And unlike a will, it does not go through probate. It does not wait for a judge. It executes its own code. I looked at the screen where my name sat next to the title sole trustee. The terms are explicit. Hart said. Upon the event of your 18th birthday, the position of successor trustee transfers immediately from me to you. As of midnight, you are not just the beneficiary. You are the manager. You are the CEO of the trust. And the house? Asked. Do I have to live in it? No. Hart said the trust grants the trustee that is you the absolute power to hold, manage, invest or liquidate any asset within the trust corpus. You do not need the consent of any beneficiary. You do not need the consent of any tenant. You do not need the permission of a court. If you decide that the house is no longer a viable investment for the trust, you have the unilateral authority to convert that real estate into capital. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was a terrifying amount of power. For 18 years, I had to ask permission to open the refrigerator. Now, I had the legal authority to sell the refrigerator and the kitchen it stood in. What about the will he is editing? I asked. The red ink. The scratching out of my name. It is legal graffiti, Hart said, his voice dripping with disdain. He can scratch your name out of his own will all he wants. He can deny you his personal savings, his car, his golf clubs. But he cannot use his will to give away property he does not own. He cannot bequeath the house to Patrice because the house is not his to give. It would be like him trying to leave the Statue of Liberty to Belle. It is a nullity. I understood then why June had done it this way. She knew Graham. She knew he would try to bully the law. She had built a mechanism that didn't care about his bullying. However, Hart said, and the tone of his voice shifted. The clinical lawyer vanished, replaced by the weary strategist. We have the law. That is the easy part. The hard part is the human element. They are going to scream, I said. They are going to do more than scream, Hart warned. They are going to lie. When they realize the legal ground has vanished beneath them, they will pivot to emotion. They will call you unstable. They will say you were coerced. They will tell the neighbors and the police that you are having a mental breakdown. Graham will try to file an emergency injunction claiming you are incompetent. Let him try. I said he will, Hart affirmed. Which is why we need to build a firewall before we light the match. I am sending you a secure document right now. It is a certificate of trust. It is a summarized version of the trust document that proves your authority to sign acts of sale without revealing the private financial details of the other assets. You will need this for the title company. Do you see it? I refreshed my email. A file appeared. Certificate of Trust. H. Cox executed. I have it. I said good. Now, Hadley, I need you to do something for me. I need you to secure your position. If Graham was foolish enough to leave that defaced will on his desk, I need you to document it. If we end up in front of a judge, I do not want it to be your word against his. I want a picture. I stood up. I'm on it. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the bed. I moved quickly. I felt like a spy in my own home, violating the sanctity of the father-daughter bond that Graham had already severed with a red marker. I walked back down to the office. The silence of the house was now vibrating with tension. I pushed the door open. The paper was still there. I took my phone out. I didn't just take one photo. I took 10. I took close-ups of the red ink slashing through my name. I took wide shots showing the document on his desk with his family photos in the background to establish context. I took a photo of the date written in the margin. October 14th. I went back upstairs. Done. I said to Hart. Upload them. Hart commanded. Do not keep them only on your phone. If they realize what is happening, they might try to take the device. Cloud storage. External hard drive. Email them to me. Email them to a secondary address they don't know about. I sat at my laptop and began the digital fortification. I created a folder named School Project. Inside, I dumped the photos. I uploaded them to a secure cloud drive. I emailed them to Hart. I emailed them to an old account I had made for gaming years ago. Then I transferred everything to a thumb drive and shoved it deep into the pocket of my jeans. The war file is built, I said. Excellent. Hart said now the sale. You said 12 hours. That is aggressive. Hadley. Even for a cash deal. It has to be today. I said if they come home and the locks still work. I lose my nerve or they guilt me into staying or Graham physically blocks the door. It has to be done before the sun goes down. Then you need a buyer who doesn't care about inspections. Hart said you need a shark. Rafael Laredo. I said. Hart let out a short dry sound that might have been a laugh. Rafael. He has been circling this property like a vulture since your grandmother got sick. He knows the land value is skyrocketing. He wants to tear it down and build 2 modern units. I don't care if he turns it into a parking lot. I said. Does he have the cash? He always has cash. Hart said. But he will try to lowball you. He will smell desperation. He won't smell desperation, I said, looking at the sole trustee title on my screen again. He will smell an opportunity that expires at midnight. I will draft the purchase agreement. Hart said. I will alert the title company. There is a firm, Lakeview Title Services, that I have worked with before. They can handle a remote closing, but you have to make the call to Rafael. He needs to hear the authority in your voice, not mine. I'll call him, I said. Hadley. Hart paused. Once you sign that paper, there is no undo button. You are evicting your family. You are making yourself homeless. Are you sure? I looked around my room. I looked at the bed where I had cried myself to sleep when Patrice forgot to pick me up from school. I looked at the window where I had watched them leave for family vacations without me. I'm not making myself homeless, I said. I'm cashing out my trauma. Call him. Hart said. I will stand by. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. They were shaking from the adrenaline of finally holding the detonator. I found Rafael Laredo's number in a pile of business cards my father kept in a junk drawer in the kitchen. Graham had kept it just in case, probably thinking he would eventually sell the house himself and pocket the millions. I dialed the number. It rang 4 times. Laredo. A voice answered. It was deep. Fast. Impatient. Background noise of construction machinery hummed behind him. This is Hadley Cox, I said. June Caldwell's granddaughter. There was a pause. The construction noise seemed to fade as he likely stepped into a quieter space. I remember you, he said. The quiet one. Is everything all right? I heard your grandmother pass some time ago. I'm not calling for condolences, I said. I am calling to sell you the property at 1402 Oakwood Drive. Silence. I could practically hear him calculating. I thought your father said that house would never be for sale. Raphael said. He told me he was going to die in that house. My father doesn't own the house. I said the trust owns the house, and as of 8 o'clock this morning, I am the sole trustee. Is that right? Raphael's voice changed. The shark had entered the water. Well, I'm always interested. But these things take time. I would need to walk the property, check the foundation, look at the comps. No. I cut him off. You know the foundation. You know the zoning. You've been stalking this lot for 5 years. Here's the deal. You get the house, the land, and everything attached to it. I want a clean sale. No contingencies. No inspections. Sold as is. I can have an offer to you by next week, he said. I need the money in the escrow account by 5 o'clock today, I said. Raphael laughed. Today. Start the car. Kid. That is impossible. Title search alone takes. The title is clean, I said. My lawyer is Evan Hart. He has the abstract ready. We use Lakeview Title. They are on standby. We do a digital closing via Zoom. You wire the funds. I sign the deed. You get the keys. He stopped laughing. Why the rush? Did you kill someone in the kitchen? No, I said. But I am removing 3 people from the premises, and I prefer to do it with a sold sign on the lawn. Family dispute, Raphael said. Messy? I don't like messy. It's not messy, I countered. It's precise. I have the legal authority. I have the lawyer. I have the keys. The only thing I am missing is the wire transfer. How much? He asked. Market value is $600,000, I said. But you won't pay that. 400. He said instantly. For a same-day close. Sight unseen with potential eviction drama. 400,000 is generous. 550,000. I said cash 450. He countered 500,000. I said, and not a penny less. That is 100,000 under market value for a prime corner lot in Stonebridge. You can tear it down and build 2 units that will sell for 800,000 each. Do not pretend you aren't robbing me even at 500. There was a long silence. I held my breath. I was gambling with the only asset I had. If he said no, I was stuck. 500,000? Raphael repeated. Cash closing today. Yes. Does the house come empty? He asked. Comes with people, I said. But they are leaving tonight. I will handle the access. You just handle the money. I'll be there in 30 minutes, Raphael said. I want to see the face of the person selling me a $500,000 house in 12 hours. 30 minutes. I agreed. Bring your ID. I hung up the phone. $500,000. I leaned against the kitchen counter. The house was still silent, but the air felt different now. It was no longer a home. It was a liquid asset. It was a pile of lumber and drywall that had just been converted into freedom. I looked at the sticky note on the island. Don't make a fuss. I wasn't making a fuss. I was making a transaction. I opened the fridge and took out a bottle of water. My hand was steady. I had crossed the line. I had initiated the sequence. There was no going back to being the girl who mowed the lawn for an allowance. I walked to the front door and unlocked it. I wanted to be ready when Raphael arrived. I wanted him to see me standing in the doorway, not hiding in the shadows. I checked my email again. Hart had already sent the draft purchase agreement. It was brutal and beautiful in its simplicity. Seller Hadley Cox. Trustee buyer Rafael Laredo. Price $500,000. I forwarded the document to the email address Rafael had given me years ago, just to show him I wasn't bluffing. Then I went to the hall closet. I pulled out a black marker and a piece of plain white paper. I wrote 3 words on it. Property under contract. I didn't tape it up yet. I would wait until the money hit the account. But holding the sign felt good. It felt like holding a shield. I sat on the bottom step of the staircase and waited. The clock on the wall ticked. 11 o'clock. My parents were at the lawyer's office, probably arguing about how to split my share of the estate they thought they controlled. They were fighting over a mirage. Meanwhile, the real world was pulling into the driveway. The adrenaline of the sale had settled into a cold, rhythmic focus. I sat at the kitchen island, the laptop screen acting as the only source of light in a room that felt increasingly like an interrogation cell. I had the power to sell the house. That was the weapon. But to win the war that would inevitably follow the sale, I needed ammunition. I clicked on the tab labeled Transaction History. The interface was clean, sterile, and terrifyingly detailed. It listed every cent that had moved in and out of the June Caldwell Irrevocable Trust for the past 5 years. My grandmother had funded the trust with a significant amount of cash to cover property taxes, insurance, and essential maintenance until I turned 18. She had wanted to ensure the house didn't fall into disrepair while I was growing up. She had trusted Evan Hart to approve the withdrawals, and Hart, being a lawyer in an office 20 m away, had relied on the invoices my father submitted. I began to scroll. First, the expenses looked normal. Property tax, homeowner's insurance, HVAC repair. But then I saw the reimbursements. My father had been treating the trust like a personal expense account, disguising lifestyle costs as essential maintenance. I opened a second window on my laptop and pulled up my own bank statements. The meager history of a checking account funded by minimum wage shifts and lawn mowing. I started cross-referencing. The first match made my stomach turn. Date August 12. 2 years ago. Trust withdrawal. Emergency vehicle repair. Safety essential $850. Pay Graham Caldwell reimbursement. I froze. I remembered that week the brake pads on the family sedan had ground down to metal. I had been the one driving it to work. Graham had told me that since I was the primary user, it was my responsibility to fix it. I had drained my savings account. I had paid the mechanic in cash. $850 exactly. I still had the receipt in a shoebox upstairs. Graham had taken the invoice from the mechanic, the one I paid, and submitted it to the trust as if he had paid it. He claimed reimbursement for money he never spent. He had effectively stolen $850 from my future to pay himself for my labor. I didn't stop. I opened a spreadsheet. I named it simply theft. I found the kitchen renovation from 3 years ago. The trust had paid out $12,000 for structural repair water damage. There had been no water damage. I remembered Patrice standing in this very kitchen, holding color swatches, saying the old counters were spiritually draining. They had used trust money meant for rotting beams to buy quartz and a wine fridge. I found the educational enrichment withdrawals. July 10th. $3,000 label summer intensive camp. Belle. That was the summer I stayed home to paint the exterior of the garage, because Graham said we couldn't afford to hire a painter. I was scraping, peeling paint in 90 degrees heat while Belle was at a lakeside retreat paid for by the money my grandmother left for me. I typed faster. My fingers flew across the keyboard documenting the larceny. Belle's gymnastics fees $200 a month. Billed as physical therapy. Patrice's club membership $1,500. Billed as community association dues. They hadn't just lived rent-free. They had cannibalized the corpus of the trust to fund their pretensions. Every time they told me, "We can't afford it," they were lying. The money was there. They were just spending it on themselves. And then I found the anomaly. It was a transfer dated 6 months ago. It didn't fit the pattern of petty greed. It was massive. Date April 3rd. Amount $52,000. Pay Obsidian Enterprises LLC. Memo contractor advance. Roof replacement. I looked up at the ceiling. The roof had not been replaced. We had the same asphalt shingles we had lived under for a decade. There had been no crew. No dumpster. No hammering. I quickly opened a new tab and searched for Obsidian Enterprises LLC Ohio. The search results were thin, but I found a filing address. It was a P.O. box in a strip mall in a neighboring town. I dug deeper. Checking the state business registry. The registered agent was a man named Davin Kress. I knew that name. Davin Kress was a loan shark, or as he liked to call himself, a high-risk private lender. Graham had mentioned him once in a hushed, terrified phone call I had overheard late at night. My father had a gambling problem. He thought he hid well poker nights that went too late, investment opportunities that evaporated. My father had taken $52,000 of my grandmother's money, faked a contract for a roof that never existed and used it to pay off a gambling debt. He had embezzled a fortune. I didn't feel angry anymore. Anger is hot. This felt like dry ice. Burned. But it was clean. I hit the print button. The printer in the corner of the kitchen hummed to life. I printed everything. The trust ledger. The fake roof invoice. The reimbursement for my car repairs. I printed the corresponding bank statement from my own account showing I was the one who paid for the breaks. I grabbed a manila envelope from the drawer. I took a red marker the same color my father had used to cross out my name, and wrote one word on the front: evidence. I shoved the stack of warm papers inside. This was my shield. If they tried to say I was crazy, I would show them the numbers. If they tried to say I was ungrateful, I would show them the theft. I picked up my phone and dialed Hart. I found it. I said the moment he answered. I found the reason they are so desperate to keep control. What did you find? Hadley. Hart asked. Embezzlement, I said. Graham faked a roof replacement 6 months ago. $52,000. It went to a shell company run by a bookie, and he has been double-dipping on expenses for years, submitting receipts for things I paid for. Hart let out a low whistle. That changes the landscape. That is not just a civil dispute. That is criminal fraud. Breach of fiduciary duty is one thing. Theft is another. I have it all printed, I said. I have the dates. I have the amounts. Good, Hart said. Keep that folder close. If Graham tries to file an injunction to stop the sale, we won't just counter. We will threaten to hand that file to the district attorney. That should silence him. I want to go into that courtroom with paper. Mr. Hart, I said, my voice steady. Not with tears. Not with stories about how mean my stepmother is. I want to walk in with math. They can argue with my memory, but they cannot argue with the bank. You are your grandmother's granddaughter, Hart said with genuine respect. Now listen. The sale. I have the escrow officer ready. Her name is Sarah Jenkins. She is with Lakeview Title Services. She is expecting the wire from Raphael. She is preparing the digital deed transfer. You will need to verify your identity with her over a video call in about an hour. I'll be ready, I said. Also, Hart added. Raphael is en route. He texted me. He wants to see the certificate of trust before he releases the funds. He is a businessman. He needs to know you actually hold the keys to the kingdom. I'm sending it to him now, I said. I hung up and opened the secure file Hart had sent me earlier. I used a PDF editor to redact the specific dollar amounts of the other assets in the trust. Raphael didn't need to know about the stocks or bonds. He only needed to see the paragraph that named Hadley Cox as the sole trustee with the power to sell real property. I attached the file to a text message and sent it to Raphael's number. Proof of authority attached. Wire instructions are with the title company. Clock is ticking. His reply came 2 minutes later. Received. I am 5 minutes away. I hope you have coffee. I didn't have coffee. I had adrenaline and a timeline. I looked at the time. 11:45. I had one more logistical problem. When Graham and Patrice came home and found their keys didn't work, they would try to break in. They would claim they lived here. They would claim it was their residence. I needed to change the definition of access. I searched for a local locksmith who advertised 24/7 emergency service. I found one with 5 stars called Secure It Now. I called. I need a rekey. I told the dispatcher. And I need a smart lock installation. Front door. Back door. Garage entry. I need it done within the hour. I will pay double the emergency rate. We have a tech finishing a job nearby. The dispatcher said he can be there in 20 minutes. Double rate is $300 plus parts. Deal. I said. I want the receipts emailed. No paper. Name Hadley Cox. I am the owner. I hung up. Then I opened a new browser tab. U-Haul. I didn't need a big truck. I wasn't taking the leather sofas Patrice had bought on credit. I wasn't taking the 80 inches TV Graham watched football on while ignoring me. I wasn't taking the dining table where I was never asked about my day. I reserved the smallest cargo van available. 10-foot box. Pickup time. 12:30. Driver Hadley Cox. I confirmed the reservation. I stood up and walked to the window. A black Range Rover was turning onto the street. It wasn't my parents'. It was too clean. Too aggressive. It slowed down as it approached number 1402. Raphael. He parked on the street. Not in the driveway. That was a respectful move. Or perhaps a tactical one. He stepped out of the car. He was wearing a dark suit without a tie, looking exactly like a man who bought houses before lunch. I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. The air was crisp. Raphael walked up the driveway, his eyes scanning the roof line, the gutters, the windows. He was appraising his purchase. He stopped at the bottom of the steps and looked up at me. He didn't smile. You look like you're waiting for a siege, he said. I am waiting for a wire transfer. I corrected him. Touché. Raphael said. He held up his phone. I read the trust certificate. It's solid. You have the power. But let me ask you one question. Hadley. Just one. I said. Is this revenge? He asked. Because revenge deals usually come back to bite the buyer. If your father shows up with a shotgun, I need to know. I looked him in the eye. I touched the manila envelope tucked under my arm. The envelope that contained the proof of $52,000 worth of stolen trust funds. It's not revenge. I said calmly. It's an audit. They spent my money. Now I am liquidating the asset to stop the bleeding. If my father shows up, he won't be holding a shotgun. He will be holding a subpoena. Raphael studied my face for a long moment. He seemed to decide I was telling the truth. Okay, he said. I like a clean audit. He tapped his phone screen. I just authorized the wire to Lakeview Title. $500,000. Sarah should see it in 10 minutes. Come inside, I said. We have 11 minutes until the locksmith arrives. Locksmith? Raphael raised an eyebrow as he climbed the steps. New owner. New locks. I said. I assume you don't want the previous tenants having a key to your investment. Smart kid. Raphael murmured. He stepped across the threshold. I followed him in and closed the door. The sound of the latch clicking shut felt like the first note of a victory song. But the song wasn't over. The hardest part was about to begin. The money was moving. But the family was coming back. And they were bringing a lifetime of entitlement with them. The house was 3,000 square feet of suburban performative art. But my life, my actual life, fit into the back of a rental van with room to spare. I moved through the upstairs hallway with the efficiency of a thief in the night, though it was high noon. And I held the deed. I wasn't stealing anything. I was extracting myself. I walked into my bedroom and grabbed the duffel bag. Into it went the things that proved I had existed before Patrice decided I was a background character. The framed photo of my mother, taken on a beach in Florida when I was 4. The glass dusty, but the smile still bright. The acceptance letter from the Great Lakes Institute of Aeronautics. A piece of paper I had hidden under my mattress for 3 weeks because Graham would have asked why I wasn't applying to the local community college to save money. I grabbed the charcoal gray hoodie I had bought with my own tips from the coffee shop. It had the Institute's logo on the chest. It was the only piece of clothing I owned that Patrice hadn't critiqued for being too sullen or too cheap. I walked past the guest room, the room Patrice called the sanctuary, filled with white linen sofas nobody was allowed to sit on and ceramic vases that cost more than my car. I didn't touch a thing. That wasn't my life. That was her stage set. Leaving it behind felt better than destroying it. It was a rejection of her aesthetic. A silent statement that her taste held no value to me. I heard the heavy mechanical grind of a drill from the front door. I jogged downstairs. The locksmith from Secure It Now, a burly guy named Mike, was already kneeling at the entrance. He worked fast. Metal shavings curling onto the welcome mat. Old deadbolt is stripped anyway. Mike grunted without looking up. You want the smart keypad installed? Yeah, I said. And I need master control on my phone. No other physical keys. You got it. Give me 10 minutes. I watched him pull the brass cylinder out of the door. The lock that my father had turned every night for 10 years, locking me in with them. Mike tossed it into a small cardboard box of trash. Can you throw that away for me? I asked. I don't want it in the house trash. Sure. Mike said. It's just scrap brass to me. I walked to the kitchen island where Raphael was standing. He had his phone propped up against a fruit bowl, a Bluetooth earpiece in his ear. On the screen was Sarah from Lakeview Title. We are reviewing the preliminary title report. Sarah's voice tinny through the speaker. I see the certificate of trust you sent. It allows for unilateral sale. However, I need to confirm there are no spousal claims from your father on the property. I stepped into the frame of the camera. My grandmother, June Caldwell, was the sole grantor. I said clearly. My father, Graham Caldwell, has never held title. He was a tenant at will. There are no spousal rights because he never owned the asset. Confirmed. Sarah said, the typing sound of her keyboard rhythmic and fast. I am pushing the closing documents to your email now via DocuSign. Mr. Laredo, are you ready to initiate the wire? Raphael looked at me. Are we doing this? Hadley. Last chance to back out and wait for a family therapy session. I don't need therapy. I said I need liquidity. My phone pinged. Lakeview Title. Please sign. Purchase agreement. 1402 Oakwood Drive. I opened the document on my laptop. I didn't skim it. I read the bolded sections. Seller Hadley Cox. Trustee buyer Raphael Laredo. Property condition ASIS. Seller makes no warranties regarding the condition of the roof, foundation, or systems. That ASIS clause was my armor. It meant that when Raphael found out the dishwasher leaked or the furnace was 10 years old, he couldn't come back and sue the trust. I tapped the screen. Click to sign. A digital signature. A swirled Hadley Cox. stamped itself onto the PDF. Then came the trustee affidavit. Hadley Cox. Declare under penalty of perjury that I am the serving trustee and have the power to act. Click to sign. Sign. I said. Receive. Sarah said instantly. Mr. Laredo. I need the funds to clear escrow before I can record the deed. Raphael tapped his own screen. Wire sent $500,000. Reference number ending in 492. Now we wait for the Fed. Sarah said. Wait. I said one more thing. Raphael looked up. What? I want a non-refundable earnest money deposit released to me immediately. I said $20,000 separate from the closing wire. I want it hard. If for some reason the wire bounces or you get cold feet in the next hour, I want to know I have walking money. Raphael chuckled, shaking his head. You are relentless. The full amount is already wired. Hadley. It is all hard money now. Once Sarah confirms receipt, it is done. There is no cold feet. Good, I said. The locksmith stood up. All set. Miss. Download the app. I walked over to the door. I paired my phone with the new sleek black keypad. The mechanism hummed and clicked. I set a master code. Then I set a temporary guest code for Raphael. The old keys. I asked Mike. He rattled the box in his hand. Gone. I paid him $350 via Venmo, tipping him $50 for the speed. He walked out to his van, taking the physical access to my childhood with him. I went to the hall closet and grabbed the sign I had written earlier. Property under contract. Pending closing. I didn't use tape. I used the heavy-duty packing adhesive I had bought for the boxes. I plastered the sign on the inside of the glass storm door facing out. It wasn't a request. It was a billboard. I walked back to the kitchen. Raphael was leaning against the counter, looking at his watch. You realize, he said quietly, that when they get here, they aren't going to care about the law. They are going to scream. I know. I said. That is why I am hiring security. Me? Raphael asked. No. I said the cloud. I took a small wireless security camera I had bought online weeks ago, originally intending to put it in my room to see if Patrice was going through my things. I peeled the backing off and stuck it on top of the kitchen cabinets, hidden behind a decorative ivy plant Patrice loved. It had a perfect wide-angle view of the front door and the main hallway. I pulled up the app on my phone. The feed was crisp. Hide audio and video. Lawyer Hart told me Ohio is a one-party consent state for recording conversations you are part of. I told Raphael. But since this is now your property or about to be, I need your permission to record the premises. You have it. Raphael said. Record away. If your dad tries to punch me, I want it in 4K. He won't punch you. I said he is a coward. He only punches down and you are bigger than him. Cox. Sarah's voice cut through the air. Sharp and professional. I rushed back to the laptop. I have confirmation from the bank. Sarah said. Incoming wire of $500,000 has been received and verified. The funds are in the Lakeview Title Escrow account. I am authorizing the disbursement to the trust account ending in 881 right now. I refreshed my banking tab. The balance, which had been sitting at a meager $200 from my last paycheck, didn't move yet. I held my breath. 1 second. 2 seconds. The screen blinked. Current balance. $500. $21,400. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since I was 6 years old. The number was so large it looked fake. It looked like a phone number, but it was real. It was the monetary value of my pain. Liquidated and deposited. Record the deed. Sarah, I said, my voice shaking slightly. Recording electronically with the county clerk now. she said. Congratulations, Mr. Laredo. You are the owner of record. Thanks, Sarah, Raphael said. He looked at me. Well, you did it. Not yet, I said. They are still coming. I closed the laptop. I put it in my backpack. You have the code. I told Raphael. The house is yours. But I need to stay until they get here. I need to be the one to open the door. I'm staying too, Raphael said. I have to secure my asset. Plus, I think you might need a witness who isn't a family member. I nodded. I sat down on the stool where I used to eat cereal alone while Patrice made pancakes for Belle. The house was empty. My boxes were in the van. The money was in the bank. The locks were changed. I checked the time. 1:15 in the afternoon. My father usually took a long lunch after legal meetings to decompress. They would be heading back soon. I sat there, my hands folded on the cold quartz countertop. I wasn't scared anymore. I was just waiting for the audience to arrive so I could deliver the final line of the play. I checked the camera feed one last time. It was recording. Everything was in place. The heist was complete. Now we just had to survive the getaway. The white Mercedes SUV pulled into the driveway at exactly 2:14 in the afternoon. I watched from the kitchen monitor, my heart beating against my ribs like a trapped bird. Not out of fear, but out of anticipation. This was the moment the trap snapped shut. I saw Patrice in the passenger seat first. She was checking her makeup in the visor mirror, oblivious to the fact that she was about to become homeless. Graham was driving. He turned the engine off and stepped out, holding his briefcase, looking like a man who had had a frustrating morning and was ready to take it out on his furniture or his daughter. Belle hopped out of the back, headphones around her neck, scrolling on her phone. They walked toward the front porch in a loose phalanx of entitlement. Then they stopped. Graham froze mid-step. He was staring at the glass storm door. The white paper I had glued there. Property under contract. Pending closing. Screamed at him in black marker. I saw his face turn a shade of red that usually preceded a thrown object. He lunged forward, not believing what he was seeing, and jammed his key into the lock. It didn't turn. He twisted it harder. The new cylinder Mike the locksmith had installed an hour ago did not budge. Simply rejected him. What is this? Graham shouted. He rattled the handle violently. Hadley, open this door. I looked at Raphael. He was leaning against the foyer wall, arms crossed, looking bored. Evan Hart, who had arrived 10 minutes prior to oversee the transition, straightened his tie. Showtime, Hart said softly. I walked to the door. Graham was pounding on the wood now with the flat of his hand. Open the damn door. The key is broken. I unlocked the smart deadbolt from my phone. The mechanism slid back with a heavy mechanical thud. I opened the door exactly 4 inches, keeping my foot brace behind it. Graham pushed, expecting the door to yield to his anger, but he stopped when he saw the crowd behind me. He saw me. Then he saw Raphael Laredo, 6 feet 2 inches in of muscle and expensive suit, standing comfortably in the hallway. Then he saw Evan Hart, the lawyer he thought he had intimidated that morning, holding a black leather folio. What is going on? Graham demanded, his voice dropping an octave into that dangerous growl he used when he wanted to be obeyed. Who are these people in my house? It is not your house, I said. My voice was quiet. It didn't tremble. The locks have been changed. Excuse me. Patrice pushed forward, her face a mask of confused offense. Hadley. Sweetheart. Stop playing games. We are tired. Who is that man? She pointed a manicured finger at Raphael. That is the owner, I said. Belle looked up from her phone, finally processing the scene. Why is there a weird sign on the door? Is this a prank? Move. Graham snarled. He tried to shove the door open, using his shoulder as a battering ram. I stepped back. Not because I was yielding, but because I wanted him to trigger the sensor. Graham stumbled into the foyer. I don't know what kind of teenage rebellion stunt this is, but get these people out of my living room before I call the police. Actually. Hart stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise like a scalpel. We should probably wait for the police. They are already on their way. Graham stared at Hart. I told you this morning I would fire you if you didn't release the deed. And I told you that you have no authority to fire me. Hart replied smoothly. And as of 12:30 this afternoon, you have no authority over this property. The June Caldwell Trust has divested the asset. Divested? Patrice screeched. She looked around the foyer, her eyes darting to the vase on the console table, checking if her world was still there. What does that mean? Means I sold it, I said. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb that had landed but not yet detonated. You can't sell it. Graham laughed. A wet, nervous sound. You're a child. You're 18 today. You don't own anything. I am the head of this household. You are a tenant. Hart corrected him. A tenant at will, and the trustee has terminated your tenure effective immediately upon the closing of the sale. I am the trustee. Graham roared. He stepped toward Hart, his hands balled into fists. No, I said. I am. I held up the tablet I was carrying. On the screen was the executed deed, the timestamp from the county clerk, and the wire confirmation. Sold to Rafael Laredo for $500,000. I read closing finalized at 1:17 p.m. Graham looked at the screen. He looked at Rafael. You bought this? Graham spat from her. She is mentally unstable. She doesn't know what she is doing. I will sue you for everything you have. I bought a property with clear title, Rafael said, his voice deep and unbothered. Whatever domestic dispute you have is between you and the previous owner. I am just here to secure my building, and right now you are trespassing. Trespassing? Graham's face went purple. I bought the roof over this house. I paid the electric bill. You paid with stolen money, I said. The words hung in the air. Graham flinched as if I had slapped him. What did you say? He whispered. The $52,000 for the roof replacement that never happened, I said. Obsidian Enterprises. I have the bank records. Dad, I have the invoices. I gave a copy to Mr. Hart. And I have a copy ready for the district attorney if you want to keep shouting about rights. Graham went pale. The air went out of him. He looked at Patrice, who was staring at him with a mixture of horror and calculation. You stole from the trust, Patrice whispered. Not you stole from your daughter. You stole from the money pot. It was a loan, Graham yelled, pivoting back to anger because it was the only defense he had. I was going to pay it back. And you? He lunged at me. You ungrateful little witch. I raised you. He crossed the threshold of the hallway, stepping toward the kitchen. The alarm I had installed pierced the air. It was a sonic assault, deafening and disorienting. The high-deal siren bounced off the hardwood floors. Turn it off. Belle screamed, covering her ears. Get out, Raphael shouted over the noise. The system is armed against unauthorized entry. Graham froze. He looked around wildly, realized he was no longer the master of the environment. Through the open front door, I saw the flashing blue lights of a Stonebridge police cruiser pulling up to the curb. The alarm company had done its job. 2 officers walked up the driveway, hands resting on their belts. One was a sergeant I recognized from the coffee shop. The other was younger. Cut the alarm, the sergeant yelled. I tapped my phone. The siren died instantly, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. What is the problem here? The sergeant asked. Stepping into the foyer, he looked at the group. A furious man in a suit, a crying woman, a teenager, a lawyer, a large stranger, and me. Officer Graham stepped forward, putting on his respectable citizen face. Thank God. These people have broken into my home. They have changed the locks. I want them arrested immediately. The sergeant looked at me. Is this your residence? Sir? Yes, Graham said. I have lived here for 12 years. This is my daughter. She is having a breakdown. Officer Hart stepped in. He held out a business card in a thick folder. I am Evan Hart, attorney for the June Caldwell Trust. This property was sold today. The gentleman shouting is a former tenant who has been legally displaced by the sale. The sergeant took the folder. He opened it. He looked at the deed. He looked at the trust certificate. He looked at the timestamp. Who is the owner of record? The sergeant asked. I am, Raphael said. He handed over his ID and the electronic purchase agreement on his phone. Raphael Laredo. I closed on the property an hour ago. Cox here is the seller and former trustee. These 3 individuals, he pointed to my family, are refusing to vacate the premises. The sergeant looked at Graham. Sir, do you have a deed or a lease agreement? I am her father. Graham sputtered. I don't need a lease. I am the patriarch of this family. That is not a legal document, sir, the sergeant said dryly. He turned to me. Mom. Are you the trustee named here? Yes, I said. I showed him my ID. I turned 18 today. The trust transferred to me at midnight. I exercised my right to sell. She's 18. Patrice jumped in, tears streaming down her face, ruining her mascara. She is a child. She doesn't understand. They tricked her. We have been robbed. We haven't been robbed. Patrice. I said coldly. We have been audited. The sergeant handed the papers back to Hart. He looked at Graham. Sir, according to these documents, you have no legal standing to be in this house. The owner. He nodded at Raphael. Wants you to leave. This is now a civil matter regarding the eviction. But right now it is criminal trespass if you stay after being asked to leave. You can't do this. Graham whispered. He looked small. The bluster was evaporating, replaced by the terrifying reality of consequences. Where are we supposed to go? That is not my concern, Raphael said. But because I am not a monster, and because Hadley asked me to be reasonable, I will give you 30 minutes. 30 minutes? Belle shrieked. My whole life is in there. 30 minutes to grab essentials, Raphael said, checking his watch. Medicines. Clothes for a few days. Toiletries. Anything else. Furniture. Electronics. Personal items you can arrange to pick up with a moving company later next week. But right now you leave. The keys don't work for a reason. This is insane. Graham said. He looked at me. He looked for the fear he was used to seeing in my eyes. He didn't find it. He found a wall. Hadley, please. This is your home. It was a house. I said. You made it a bank and you overdrew the account. 30 minutes. The sergeant said. I will stand right here to ensure the peace is kept. If you destroy any property or cause a scene, you will be escorted out in cuffs. Graham looked at the sergeant, then at Hart, then at the floor. He realized the audience wasn't buying his performance. Fine. He spat. Get the bags. Patrice. For the next half hour, I stood in the corner of the foyer next to Raphael. I watched them scramble. It was pathetic and revealing. Patrice didn't run for photo albums. She ran for her jewelry box and her designer purses. Belle ran for her laptop and her expensive sneakers. Graham ran for the file cabinet in his office. "Stop him," I said to the sergeant. The officer stepped into the doorway of the office. "Sir, leave the files. Only personal effects. Documents stay until ownership is sorted." Graham froze. His hand on a stack of papers, probably more evidence of his fraud. He dropped them back onto the desk with a look of pure hatred. I didn't move. I didn't help. I watched them pack their lives into suitcases like they were fleeing a burning building. In a way, they were fleeing the arson they had committed against my life. At 2:55, they were standing on the porch. The SUV was loaded with chaotic piles of clothes and bags. Graham turned to me one last time. "You are dead to me," he said. "I know," I said. "I was dead to you the moment I stopped paying. You will regret this," Patrice hissed. "You will come crawling back when that money runs out." "The money won't run out," I said, "because I'm not spending it on you." They got into the car. The sergeant watched them back out of the driveway. Graham honked the horn in hard, a final impotent scream of rage. Then they were gone. The sergeant turned to Raphael. "Do you want to file a formal report for the trespass?" "Not today," Raphael said. "Just wanted them out." "Call us if they come back," the sergeant said. He tipped his hat to me. "Happy birthday, miss." He walked to his cruiser. I stood in the open doorway. The house was silent again. But it was a different silence than this morning. It wasn't the silence of secrets. It was the silence of a vacuum. "They are gone," Hart said, closing his folio. "Yes," I said. I looked at the empty driveway. I looked at the under contract sign. "I need a ride," I said to Raphael. "My van is parked around the corner. I'll drive you," Raphael said. I turned my back on the foyer. I didn't look at the kitchen where I had cooked their meals. I didn't look at the stairs I had scrubbed. I walked out the door and let the smart lock click shut behind me. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The door was locked. The family was gone. But the house was not yet sold. I stood in the kitchen, the silence ringing in my ears like the aftermath of an explosion. Rafael Laredo was already back at the island, his laptop open, his face illuminated by the blue light of the screen. Evan Hart was arranging documents on the court's countertop with the precision of a surgeon preparing for a transplant. "We have 11 minutes, Hart said, checking his watch. "The county recorder's office closes their intake for same-day digital filings at 3:30 if we miss the window. The deed does not record until tomorrow morning. That gives Graham 18 hours to file a temporary restraining order or an injunction to freeze the title. We won't miss it," Raphael said. He looked at me. "Are you ready to finish this?" I walked to the counter. I felt lightheaded, but my hands were steady. "I am ready." On the screen, Sarah Jenkins from Lakeview Title was waiting. The video feed was crisp. Behind her, I could see the busy background of a title office phones ringing, paper moving. To them, this was just another Tuesday. To me, it was the execution of my freedom. "Okay," Sarah said, her voice professional and brisk. "We are in the final stage. Identity verification is complete. Funds are in escrow. I need to read the settlement statement into the record. Please confirm you can hear me clearly." "Loud and clear," Raphael said. "Yes," I said. "Property address: 1402 Oakwood Drive, Stonebridge, Ohio." Sarah recited. "Seller: the June Caldwell Irrevocable Trust, Hadley Cox. Sole trustee: buyer: Rafael Laredo. Purchase price $500,000. Paid in full via wire transfer." Hearing the number spoken aloud gave them a physical weight. $500,000. It was a number that Graham would have killed for. It was a number Patrice had spent in her dreams 1,000 times. "Mr. Laredo. Sarah continued. You have waived all inspections. You have waived the property disclosure review. You are accepting the title as is. Where is? Do you acknowledge? I acknowledge. Raphael said. He didn't blink. He didn't look at the ceiling for water stains. He just wanted the dirt. Cox. Sarah turned her attention to me. I need your signature on the grant deed and the HUD-1 settlement statement. You will be signing twice. Once as the individual and once as the trustee. I picked up the stylus Hart offered me. I looked at the tablet. The line was waiting. Grantor Hadley Cox. Trustee. I thought about the pen Graham had used this morning. The red marker. Angry. Violent slashes he had made across my name on the will. He had tried to write me out of history with ink. I was about to write him out of the future with pixels. I pressed the stylus to the glass. My signature flowed out sharp. Angular. Final. Hadley Cox. I signed the second line. Hadley Cox. Signatures captured. Sarah said. I am releasing the funds from escrow to the trust account. Now we waited. The room was so quiet. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. The expensive stainless steel fridge Patrice had screamed at me for touching with greasy hands when I was 10. On Raphael's laptop, a notification banner slid across the top right corner of the screen. Alert wire transfer received. $500. $1,000. It was done. The money was not in the air. It was not promised. It was settled. Funds received. Hart confirmed. Looking at his own phone where he monitored the trust account. The trust is liquid. Recording the deed now. Sarah said. Her typing was a machine gun rhythm. I have a contact at the clerk's office. I am pushing this through the priority portal. Wait for it. 3 seconds passed. 5 recorded. Sarah announced book 492. Page 118. The property is legally transferred. Congratulations, Mr. Laredo. You own the house. Thank you. Sarah. Raphael said. He closed his laptop. He didn't smile. He didn't pop a bottle of champagne. He didn't high-five me. He simply stood up, buttoned his suit jacket, and looked around the kitchen with the cold, assessing gaze of a landlord. Okay, Raphael said. Transaction closed. Hadley. Do you have everything you need out of the house? Yes, I said. My bag is by the door. Good, he said. I have a crew coming in an hour to board up the windows. Insurance requirement for a vacant property. I don't want anyone coming back tonight claiming they forgot a toothbrush. It was a stark reminder. He wasn't my savior. He was a businessman who had just acquired a Tyrone. He didn't care about my memories. He cared about his liability. And strangely, that coldness was exactly what I needed. It validated that this wasn't a family tragedy anymore. It was just business. I'm ready to go, I said. Hart packed his folio. I will walk you out. Hadley, we need to discuss the tax implications of the sale, but we can do that next week. For now, you need to disappear. We walked to the front door. The house felt different. Felt hollow. It no longer held the ghosts of my childhood. It just held drywall and studs that belonged to Raphael Laredo. I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. The autumn air was crisp, biting. I looked toward the street. My heart skipped a beat. They hadn't left. The police cruiser was gone. The officer had likely received another call or simply driven around the block. But the white SUV was parked 3 houses down, idling by the curb. As soon as I stepped out, the car lurched forward, reversing aggressively back toward the driveway. Ignore them, Hart said low in my ear. Do not engage. Raphael stepped out behind me, locking the door with his phone. The electronic chirp of the deadbolt sliding home was audible. Graham jumped out of the driver's seat before the car had fully stopped. He looked disheveled. The tie he had worn to the lawyer's office was loosened, hanging askew. His face was a map of panic. "Hadley!" he shouted. He ran up the driveway, stopping only when Raphael stepped in front of him. A human barricade. "The property is private," Raphael said. "Stay on the sidewalk. I need to talk to my daughter," Graham yelled, dodging Raphael's gaze to look at me. "Hadley, please. We need to talk just for a minute." Patrice scrambled out of the passenger side. The tears were gone, replaced by a desperate, frantic charm. "Hadley. Honey, we were just shocked. That's all. We were scared. We reacted badly." "You reacted honestly," I said. I stood on the bottom step of the porch, looking down at them. It was the first time in my life I was physically looking down at them. "We can fix this," Graham said, his voice dropping to a wheedling barter. "Look, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But selling the house, that is extreme. We can undo it. Tell this man it was a mistake. We will pay him back the deposit." "There is no deposit," I said. "The sale is recorded. The money is in the trust." Graham's eyes widened. "The money? You have the money. The trust has the money," I corrected. "That's $500,000, Graham said, licking his lips. "Hadley, listen. That is family money. Grandma intended that for all of us. I have debts. The business is struggling. If you just transfer a portion, even half, we can start over. We can buy a new place together. A fresh start. A fresh start." I repeated. "You tried to erase me this morning. You crossed my name out with red ink. That was just paperwork," Graham pleaded. "It didn't mean anything. I was just trying to protect the assets." "You were protecting them from me," I said. "So, I protected them from you. Hadley. Please." Patrice stepped in, wringing her hands. "We have nowhere to go tonight. The hotels are full. Belle is terrified. Don't do this to your sister." Belle had gotten out of the car. She wasn't crying. She looked furious. She looked like someone who had been promised a pony and received a bill. "You are such a psycho," Belle spat. "You planned this. You waited until the exact second you turned 18. Yet," I said. "I did. We knew we should have filed the papers earlier," Belle snapped, her voice high and shrill. "Mom told Dad to fix the will last week, but he waited. We could have stopped this if we had just signed the amendment before you woke up." The silence that followed was absolute. Belle covered her mouth, realizing too late what she had just admitted. Graham closed his eyes. Patrice looked at the ground. They hadn't just reacted to a misunderstanding. They had conspired. They had discussed it. They had a timeline. Mom told Dad to fix the will last week. It wasn't just greed. It was a plot. Hart stepped forward, his face grim. "Thank you for that admission. I advise you all to stop talking immediately. Anything else you say can be used as evidence of conspiracy to defraud a beneficiary." "I didn't mean," Belle started. "Quiet," Graham roared at her. He looked back at me, his eyes dead. "Hadley, just give me a number. What will it take to make this go away?" 10,020. He was still trying to buy me off. He still thought I was the girl who mowed the lawn for $20. "I don't sell emotions, Dad," I said. "And I don't sell forgiveness. I only sell real estate. And I am all out of inventory." I walked past him. He reached out to grab my arm. Raphael moved faster than a big man should. He intercepted Graham's hand, catching it by the wrist. He didn't twist it. He didn't break it. He just held it with a crushing, immovable force. Do not touch her, Raphael said. His voice was very low. She is not your daughter right now. She is a private citizen on a public sidewalk. If you touch her, I will view it as an assault. Graham yanked his hand back, cradling his wrist. I didn't look at him. I walked to where Hart's car was parked. I had my duffel bag over my shoulder, the same bag I used for gym class, now containing my entire inheritance. My van is around the corner. I told Hart. I can walk from here. I will drive you to your van, Hart said. Get in. I climbed into the passenger seat of the lawyer sedan. The leather was cool and smelled of expensive conditioner. As we pulled away, I looked in the side mirror. I saw Graham standing in the middle of the street, staring at the house that was no longer his. Patrice was yelling at him. Belle was kicking the tire of the SUV. They looked small. They looked like strangers. You did good, Hart said quietly as he turned the corner. You didn't break. I broke a long time ago, I said, watching the house disappear from the mirror. This was just me resetting the bone. We drove in silence to the U-Haul parked on the next street. I got out. I transferred my bag to the rental van. Where will you go? Hart asked. I have a place, I said. And tomorrow I have class. Check your email tonight, Hart said. I will send over the full accounting of the trust. We need to discuss the embezzlement charges against your father. Not tonight, I said. Tonight I just want to sleep in a room where I hold the key. Understood? Hart said. He waited until I was safely inside the van and had locked the doors. I started the engine. It was a loud rattling sound. Nothing like the smooth purr of my father's stolen lifestyle. Sounded like work. Sounded like a beginning. I put the van in gear and drove away. I didn't drive past the house. I took the long way out of the neighborhood, navigating the winding suburban streets of Stonebridge, leaving the wreckage in the rear-view mirror. I had 11 minutes of adrenaline left, and then the crash would come. But for now, I just drove. The apartment was small, barely 600 square feet, but it was the first place I had ever entered without knocking first. It was located on the third floor of a brick walk-up, 3 blocks from the Great Lakes Institute of Aeronautics. I chose it for exactly one reason. The window in the main living space faced west. Every evening, the sun would hit the glass and flood the room with a deep burning orange light. In my father's house, the blinds were always drawn to protect the furniture. Here, the light was allowed to touch everything. It felt like a promise that the day was over, and I had survived it. I paid the rent 6 months in advance, $7,200. I wrote the check with a hand that didn't shake, handing it to the landlord, a grumpy old man named Mr. Henderson, who didn't care about my last name or my family history. He just cared that the check cleared. For the first week, I didn't buy furniture. I slept on a mattress on the floor and ate takeout sitting on my duffel bag. It wasn't out of poverty. I had nearly $500,000 in the trust account, but out of a need to feel the space. I needed to know where the floorboards creaked. I needed to know that if I woke up in the middle of the night, the only breathing I would hear was my own. I prioritized the practical over the pretty. I went to the dealership and bought a used sedan, a gray model with 40,000 M on it, for $12,000. The salesman tried to steer me toward the sportier coupe, the kind Belle would have demanded. No. I told him. I want the one that starts every time I turn the key. I want the one that disappears in a parking lot. I wasn't trying to be noticed. I was trying to be functional. 2 days later, I walked into the bursar's office at the institute. I handed them a cashier's check for the full tuition of my first year, $24,000. The woman behind the glass looked at the check, then at me. Most students take loans, she said. I don't like debt. I replied. Debt gives people leverage over you. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than air. For years, Graham had held college over my head like a carrot on a stick, promising to help if business picked up, implying that my education was a luxury he couldn't quite afford. Now, it was paid for. My future wasn't a gift from him. It was a purchase I had made myself. I started my internship at Stratasarc Dynamics the following Monday. It was a mid-sized engineering firm that designed hydraulic components. My job was unglamorous filing schematics, running simulations, fetching coffee for the senior engineers, but it was paradise at Stratasarc when I did something right. Someone said, "Good job," when I stayed late to finish a project. My supervisor, a woman named Elena, added the hours to my timesheet. "You clocked out at 6:30, Elena told me one Friday, pointing at my log. "You stayed until 7. Fix it." "We pay for your time here." I stared at her. "It was just 30 minutes. "It is your 30 minutes, she said firmly. "Don't give it away for free. We aren't a charity. And neither are you." I went to the bathroom and cried for 5 minutes. I wasn't used to a world where my time had value. I was used to a world where my time was a penalty I paid for being born. But the old world hadn't let go completely. My phone became a battlefield. I had blocked their primary numbers the day I drove away. But they found ways around the wall. They used burner apps. They used friends' phones. They created new email addresses. The messages arrived in waves following a cycle of grief that was entirely performative. First came the rage. "You ungrateful thief. You stole our home. I hope you rot. Unknown number." Then came the guilt. "Your father is not eating. He is having chest pains. If something happens to him, it is on your hands. Call us." Unknown number. Then the bargaining. "Hadley. It's Belle. Look, Mom is crazy. But I miss you. Can we just get coffee? I need to ask you about FAFSA forms. I don't know how to apply for aid. New number." I didn't reply. I didn't engage. Every time a message popped up, I treated it like a virus. I tapped block caller. I tapped report junk. I imagined I was closing a heavy steel door, one lock at a time. Evan Hart had warned me about this. They are testing the perimeter. He had said if you answer one text even just to say "leave me alone," you have taught them that the price of your attention is 50 texts. Stay dark. So I stayed dark. I found light in new places. I made friends in my introductory thermodynamics class. There were 3 of them: Mark, Sarah, and Javi. We formed a study group that quickly morphed into a survival unit. They didn't know about the house. They didn't know about the trust. To them, I was just Hadley, the girl who was really good at solving differential equations and who always had the best snacks. One night, we were studying in my apartment. We were sitting on the floor because I still hadn't bought a sofa. We were eating cheap pepperoni pizza from the place on the corner. "This place echoes," Javi said, laughing as he tossed a crust back into the box. "You need a rug." "Hadley. It sounds like a cave in here." "I like the echo," I said. "It means there's room. We should pull our money and buy you a bean bag," Sarah said. "My back is killing me." They laughed, arguing over who had the most change in their pockets. They were talking about splitting a $20 cost 4 ways. Nobody expected me to pay for the pizza just because I was the hostess. Nobody expected me to solve their financial problems. They just wanted me to pass the napkins. It was the most expensive meal I had ever eaten because the loyalty came for free. The next step was the name. I had been carrying the name Caldwell for 18 years. It felt like wearing a coat that was 2 sizes too small and smelled of someone else's cologne. I filed the petition for a name change in the county court 3 weeks after I moved out. I didn't want a new name. I wanted an old one. I wanted my mother's name, Mercer. Hadley Mercer. Standing before the clerk to submit the paperwork felt like surgery. It was a severance. When the stamp hit the paper, approved, I felt a physical shift in my center of gravity. I wasn't Graham Caldwell's daughter anymore. I was my own ancestor. That night, I opened the heavy file box. Hart had given me the physical copies of the trust documents. I was looking for my birth certificate to update my records when I found a creamy white envelope tucked between the pages of the original deed. It was sealed with wax on the front and shaky cursive was written for Hadley to be opened when the dust settles. My grandmother. I sat on the floor, the west-facing window casting long shadows across the room. I broke the seal. The letter was short. June was never a woman who wasted ink. My dearest Hadley, if you are reading this, you have pulled the trigger. You have sold the house. You have likely left them behind. You are feeling guilty right now. You are wondering if you were too harsh. You are wondering if they really loved you and you just couldn't see it. Stop. I watched them for years. I watched how they looked at you. They do not see a person. They see a resource. Graham sees a credit line. Patrice sees a servant. Belle sees a shield to hide behind. They will come back. They will knock on your door. They will cry. But remember this. If they come back, they are not coming back for you. They are coming back because they are hungry. And you are the only meal they know how to eat. Stay full. My darling. Love, Grandma June. I held the letter until the sun went down and the room turned gray. I didn't cry. The time for crying was over. I felt a grim sense of validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. I was just the one who had finally realized I was on the menu, and I had walked out of the restaurant. I started seeing a therapist the next week. Her name was Dr. Eris. She was a calm woman with an office that smelled of lavender. I didn't tell her everything at once. We started small. I flinch when the phone rings. I told her in our first session. Why? She asked. Because a ringing phone used to mean I owed someone something. I said. It meant I was in trouble. It meant a bill was due or I had forgotten a chore, or I needed to fix a disaster I didn't create. And now? Dear. Eris asked. Now? I said. Thinking about the text from Mark asking if I wanted to study. It might just mean someone wants to know how I am. That is a hard adjustment, she said. To move from a transactional existence to a relational one, you are waiting for the invoice. Hadley. But sometimes there is no invoice. I worked on that. I worked on not checking my bank account every night. For the first month, I had logged into the trust portal every single evening before bed. I would stare at the balance, $58,000, just to make sure it hadn't vanished. I was terrified Graham would find a loophole. I was terrified the bank would make a mistake. But one Tuesday, I forgot to check. I fell asleep reading a textbook on fluid dynamics. I woke up the next morning and the world hadn't ended. The money was still there. I realized then that safety wasn't a number in a bank account. Safety was the ability to forget about the number. Life settled into a rhythm. Class. Internship. Pizza with friends. Sleep. It was boring. It was mundane and it was magnificent. But I should have known that silence is rarely permanent when you are dealing with people who feel entitled to your noise. It started with a small ripple. I was at my internship organizing files in the back room when the receptionist, a sweet girl named Kelly, poked her head in. Hadley, she said. There is a man on line 2 for you. He says he is from the Family Reconciliation Council or something. He says it's urgent regarding a legal dispute. My blood ran cold. I put down the file I was holding. Did he give a name? I asked. No. Kelly said. But he sounded very authoritative. He said you would know what it's about. I knew exactly what it was. There is no such thing as the Family Reconciliation Council. It was a bluff. It was a tactic to get me on the phone. Tell him I am not here, I said. And Kelly, if anyone calls asking for me, Unless they are from the institute or my lawyer. I am never here. Please. She saw the look on my face. The sheer white-knuckled panic I tried to hide. Okay, she said softly. I'll handle it. You're busy. She hung up on him. I stood there staring at the phone extension on my desk. They had found where I worked. That meant they had been tracking me. Maybe they had followed me. Maybe they had hired someone. The peace I had built over the last 2 months, the west-facing window, the quiet apartment, had all suddenly felt very fragile. I took out my cell phone and called Hart. They called my job. I said, I know. Hart replied. His voice was tight. They also filed a motion this morning. Graham is suing for undue influence. He claims your grandmother was senile when she wrote the trust and that you manipulated the sale. He can't win that. I said the trust is 5 years old. I was 13. He knows he can't win. Hart said he isn't trying to win the case. Hadley. He is trying to force a settlement. He is trying to bleed you with legal fees until you pay him to go away. I looked out the window of the office. The sky was gray. He wants a war. I said. He wants money. Hart corrected. But to get it, he has to destroy your character. Let him try. I said. I thought about the envelope labeled evidence that was sitting in my fireproof safe in the apartment. The proof of the embezzlement. The $52,000. I'm not the girl who mows the lawn anymore. Evan. I said. If he wants to drag this into the light, I will bring the sun. Get ready. Hart said. The hearing is set for next month. I hung up. I went back to my desk. I picked up the schematic for a high-press hydraulic valve. I focused on the lines. I focused on the math. They thought they could scare me. They thought that by invading my new life, I would retreat to the old one. They were wrong. I wasn't going to retreat. I was going to dig in. I typed a text to my study group. Pizza tonight. My treat. I need to celebrate. Javi replied instantly. Celebrate what? Celebrate the fact that I am ready for a fight. Thought, but I typed. Celebrate being me. I turned my phone face down. I had a job to do. And for the first time in my life, I was working for myself. The summons arrived on a Tuesday, delivered to my new apartment by a process server who looked bored. He handed me the thick envelope, mumbled a standard greeting, and walked away, leaving me holding the paper declaration of war. I sat on my floor and read the legal complaint. Graham was not suing me for fraud. He was not suing me for theft. He knew those claims would shatter against the wall of evidence I had built. Instead, he had chosen the one weapon that leaves no bruises, but breaks bones just the same. Plaintiff Graham Caldwell. Defendant Hadley Cox. Cause of action motion to rescind sale due to incapacity and undue influence. He was claiming I was crazy. The document was a masterpiece of fiction. It alleged that I had been emotionally unstable since my 18th birthday. It claimed that I had fallen under the predatory influence of unnamed third parties, implying Raphael or Hart, who had coerced me into selling the family home against my will. It painted a picture of a confused, vulnerable girl who needed her father to step in as a conservator to protect her from her own impulsive decisions. He was trying to Britney Spears me. I felt a cold metallic taste in my mouth. It was the taste of betrayal. Familiar but sharper than before. He wasn't just trying to get the house back. He was trying to strip me of my agency. He was telling a judge and the world that I was not a person capable of making choices. I was just a broken thing that needed to be put back on his shelf. I called Evan Hart immediately. I have it. Hart said before I could speak. I received the courtesy copy an hour ago. He says I am incompetent. I said. He says I didn't know what I was doing. It is a standard desperate move. Hart said. His voice calm but hard. When the law is against you, you attack the character. He is trying to freeze the assets. If the judge believes there is even a 1% chance you were coerced, he might issue an injunction to lock the money in the trust until a mental health evaluation is done. He wants to lock the money. I realized. He doesn't care about my mental health. He just wants to stop me from spending the cash so he can try to get his hands on it later. Exactly. Hart said. But he made a mistake by filing this motion. He has opened the door to discovery. He has claimed you are the one who is unstable. We are going to prove that the only instability in the Caldwell family is financial. But the legal assault was only the first front. The second front was social. My phone began to light up with notifications from people I hadn't spoken to in months. Aunts I only saw at Christmas. Friends of Patrice from the church choir. Even my old boss at the coffee shop. Hadley. I heard what happened. Your mother is so worried. Please don't let that lawyer take advantage of you. Honey. We are praying for you. Patrice says you are not yourself. Come home. Patrice was working the phones. She was spinning a narrative that was terrifyingly effective. In her version of the story, I wasn't the brave survivor who escaped. I was the wayward daughter who had been brainwashed by a cult or a boyfriend who had thrown her loving family onto the street in a fit of teenage rebellion. She was crying in the church pews, asking for prayers for her lost lamb, while simultaneously assassinating my character to anyone who would listen. She was trying to isolate me. She knew that if she stripped away my reputation, I would have nothing left but the money, and she assumed the money wouldn't be enough to keep me warm. Then came the third attack, and this one was aimed at my future. I walked into Stratus Arc Dynamics on Thursday morning, ready to lose myself in the quiet logic of hydraulic systems. Elena, my supervisor, called me into her office. She didn't look angry, but she looked concerned. She turned her monitor around. We received an email this morning. Elena said it was sent to the general HR inbox, but it flagged your name. I leaned in. The subject line was concern regarding employee ethics. Hadley Mercer. The email was anonymous, sent from a generic encrypted address. It read, "To whom it may concern, I believe you should know that your intern, Hadley Mercer, is currently under investigation for financial fraud and elder abuse regarding her grandmother's estate. It would be a risk to your company to allow her access to sensitive proprietary data. She has a history of theft." The room spun. Elder abuse. They were accusing me of abusing the very woman who had saved me. This is a lie, I said. My voice shook. Not from fear, but from a rage so hot it felt like it could melt the glass on the desk. My family is angry because I stopped letting them spend my money. This is retaliation. Elena studied my face. She was an engineer. She dealt in facts. I figured as much. She said quietly, "We ran a background check on you when you were hired. Hadley. It was clean. And I judge my team by the work they do in this building, not by anonymous emails from cowards. But you need to know they are trying to torch the earth under your feet." I know, I said. I am sorry they brought this to your door. Don't apologize, Elena said. Just fix it and keep doing good work. I walked out of her office feeling like I was walking through a minefield. That email had Belle's fingerprints all over it. The phrasing, pettiness, the specific aim at my career. It was her. She knew how much this internship meant to me. She was trying to kill my future because I had killed her free ride. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. But I didn't look incompetent. I looked like someone who was done running. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Hadley. It is Belle. Please don't block me. I am terrified. I took a test this morning. 2 lines. I am pregnant. Mom will kill me. Dad will kick me out. You are the only one who understands what it is like to be the disappointment. Please. I need my big sister. Meet me at the park. I stared at the screen. The old Hadley. The Hadley who had paid for the tires. The Hadley who had mowed the lawn would have responded instantly. Pregnant. It was the ultimate trump card. It was a crisis. And I had been trained since birth to be the crisis manager. My thumb hovered over the keypad. I could hear her voice in my head, crying. Scared. Was it true Belle was reckless? It was entirely possible. If I went to meet her, what would happen? Would she cry on my shoulder? Or would Graham be waiting in the bushes with a camera to prove I was associating with them, undermining my claim of estrangement? Or worse, would she use the baby as a new hostage? A new reason why I needed to unlock the trust fund for the baby? Hadley. Not for us. I thought about the email sent to my boss an hour ago. She has a history of theft. You don't try to get someone fired and then ask them for help in the same morning. Unless the request for help is just another weapon. I took a screenshot of the text. I opened my email and attached the screenshot. I forwarded it to Evan Hart with the subject line. Attempted contact, emotional manipulation. Then I went back to the text thread. I didn't type. Are you okay? I didn't type. I'm sorry. I blocked the number. It felt like cutting off a limb without anesthesia. But the letter from Grandma June echoed in my mind. If they come back. They are not coming back for you. They are coming back because they are hungry. I went back to my desk and worked until 7 o'clock that evening. I met Hart at his office. The lights were low. He had files spread out across his mahogany conference table. You did the right thing with the text, Hart said. If you had gone to meet her, they would have used it. They would have said, look, the family is intact. This is just a misunderstanding. Cancel the sale. Is she really pregnant? I asked. Does it matter? Hart countered. If she is. It is a tragedy. But it is not your tragedy. You cannot fund her mistakes anymore. He pushed a stack of papers toward me. While Graham has been busy writing fiction for the court, Hart said. I have been doing some non-fiction reading. I subpoenaed the deeper records of the trust withdrawals, going back 5 years. We found something. I looked at the spreadsheet. It was a matrix of dates and amounts. Look at the dates of the withdrawals. Hart pointed with a gold pen. And look at the dates of these credit card payments for Graham. I squinted. January 15th. Withdrawal from trust for emergency HVAC repair. For $1,000. January 16th. Payment to Visa ending in 441. For $1,000. March 3rd. Withdrawal for termite treatment. $2,500. March 4th. Payment to MasterCard. Ending in 902. $2,500. It went on and on. Dozens of entries. He wasn't just gambling with the $52,000. Hart said he was paying his monthly credit card bills with your money for years. He treated the trust like a salary. And here is the kicker. Hart tapped a line item from 3 years ago. Withdrawal. $7,000. Label Hadley Orthodontics. I never had braces. I whispered. My teeth are straight naturally. Exactly. Hart said. He invented medical needs for you to drain the account. This is not just civil misuse. This is systemic fraud. He used your name to steal from your future. I looked at the numbers. $7,000. That was more than I made in a summer at the coffee shop. He had stolen it with a single lie while I was scrubbing espresso machines to buy my own school clothes. So, what do we do? I asked. We stopped playing defense. Hart said. He filed a motion to rescind the sale. We are going to file a counter-motion to dismiss with prejudice, and we are going to attach a cross-complaint for breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and embezzlement. We are going to ask for a full forensic accounting of every penny he touched for 18 years. He will go to jail. I said. He might. Hart said. Or he might withdraw his lawsuit and run away. But we have to show him the gun. My phone rang. It was Rafael Laredo. I looked at Hart. It's the buyer. Answer it. Hart said. Put it on speaker. I tapped the button. Rafael. Hadley. Rafael's voice was tight. He sounded angry. I just had a very interesting phone call from my father. I asked. No, Rafael said. From a building inspector. A guy I know. He told me that he received an anonymous tip that the property at 1402 Oakwood has severe structural unpermitted modifications and needs to be red tagged immediately. If he red tags it, I can't develop it. I can't touch it for months. There are no unpermitted modifications. I said we never fixed anything. I know. Rafael said it is a nuisance call. Someone is trying to sabotage my investment to force me to back out of the deal. They think if they make it painful enough for me, I will demand a refund and hand the house back to the trust. It's Graham. I said. He thinks he can scare you. He can't scare me. Rafael growled. But he is wasting my time. And I bill my time at a very high rate. Hadley, I am not backing out. But you need to end this. I bought a house. Not a soap opera. If this goes to court, I will testify. But I want this family of yours buried. They will be. I said. We have the court date next Tuesday. Good, Rafael said. Because if he calls my inspector again, I am going to visit him personally, and I won't bring a lawyer. He hung up. I looked at Hart. The room felt small, charged with the energy of a coming storm. They are attacking everyone. I said my job. My friends. The buyer. They are burning down the whole village just to get to me. That is what desperate people do. Hart said they have realized that the silence didn't work. The guilt didn't work. So now they are using chaos. I want it to end. I said. I don't want a settlement. I don't want them to just go away for a while and come back when I'm 21. I want it finished. Then we go to court next Tuesday. Hart said. And we don't just win the motion. We expose the truth. We put the receipts on the table. But Hadley, you have to be ready. Graham will be there. Patrice will be there. They will cry. They will scream. They will lie to the judge's face. I know. I said. I thought about the red line through my name. I thought about the text from Belle about the baby. I thought about the fake braces and the fake roof. They spent 18 years teaching me that I didn't matter. I said. Next Tuesday, I am going to show them that I am the only thing that matters. I stood up. I gathered the files. Write the motion. Evan. I said. Include everything. The credit cards. The braces. The email to my boss. The text from Belle. Put it all in the public record. It will be a bloodbath. Hart warned. No. I said, walking to the door. It will be an autopsy. I walked out into the night air. The city was loud, filled with sirens and traffic. But for the first time, the noise didn't bother me. It sounded like the world turning. And next Tuesday, I was going to stop the world long enough to make sure Graham Caldwell never stole another second of my time. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. It was a smell I used to associate with waiting rooms and principals' offices, places where I had no power. But today, sitting at the defendant's table next to Evan Hart, the smell was different. It smelled like a sterile laboratory where a disease was about to be dissected. Judge Helen Vance sat on the bench. She was a woman with sharp glasses and a demeanor that suggested she had zero patience for domestic theater. On the other side of the aisle sat my family. Graham was wearing his Sunday best, a navy suit that was slightly too tight around the shoulders, likely bought 3 years ago with money he had siphoned from my dental fund. Patrice was dressed in muted beige, clutching a tissue she hadn't used yet, playing the role of the heartbroken mother to perfection. Belle sat on the edge of the bench, looking small and wide-eyed, wearing a cardigan I had never seen her wear before. She was trying to look like a child. She was trying to look like a victim of my cruelty. Graham's lawyer, a man named Mr. Sterling, who had a reputation for being loud and expensive, stood up. "Your Honor," Sterling began, his voice booming. "We are here to request an emergency injunction to freeze the assets of the June Caldwell Trust and to rescind the sale of the family home. My client, Graham Caldwell, brings this motion with a heavy heart. He is trying to protect his daughter." He pointed a finger at me. I didn't flinch. I stared straight ahead at the court seal on the wall. "Hadley Cox is 18 years old," Sterling continued. "Barely a legal adult. On the very morning of her birthday, while under significant emotional distress, she was coerced into liquidating the family home, the only stable environment she has ever known. We believe she has fallen under the undue influence of third parties who are seeking to exploit her inheritance. We are asking the court to appoint her father as her temporary conservator until her mental capacity can be evaluated." It was a good speech. If you didn't know the truth, you would have believed it. You would have seen a concerned father trying to save his wayward daughter from sharks. Graham nodded solemnly, wiping a non-existent tear from his eye. Judge Vance looked over her glasses at Hart. "Mr. Hart." Response. Evan Hart stood up. He didn't boom. He didn't pace. He spoke with the quiet, deadly precision of a man holding a royal flush. "Your Honor," Hart said, "the plaintiff is not trying to protect the defendant. He is trying to protect his access to her checkbook. This is not a case of undue influence. It is a case of an eviction that was 18 years overdue." "Objection," Sterling shouted. "Argumentative." "Sustain," the judge said. But she was looking at Hart with interest. "Stick to the facts, Counselor." "The facts are simple," Hart said. "The June Caldwell Irrevocable Trust is an independent legal entity. The terms are explicit. Upon her 18th birthday, Cox became the sole trustee with unilateral power to liquidate assets. The sale to Mr. Rafael Laredo was conducted legally with clear title, and the funds are secured. Mr. Caldwell has no standing. He was a tenant at will." Graham couldn't help himself. He stood up, ignoring his lawyer's hand on his arm. "She is my daughter," Graham shouted, his voice cracking with rehearsed emotion. "I raised her. I fed her and she threw us on the street without a warning. She is unstable. Your Honor, she is being manipulated by this lawyer and that developer." "Sit down." "Sir," Judge Vance said, her voice like a whip crack. "I just want my family back," Graham cried, looking at the gallery, trying to pull the audience into his play. "She is confused. She needs help." Hart looked at me. He gave a microscopic nod. It was my turn. I stood up. My legs felt solid. My hands were not shaking. "Your Honor," I said. My voice was clear in the silent room. "My father claims I acted impulsively. He claims I am confused. But I have evidence that proves the sale of the house was not an impulse. It was a reaction to a conspiracy." "Conspiracy?" The judge raised an eyebrow. "That is a strong word. Cox." "I have Exhibit A," Hart said. He handed a folder to the bailiff on the large monitor in the courtroom. The image appeared. It was the photo I had taken on the morning of my birthday. The photocopy of Graham's was sitting on his desk. The red ink was vibrant on the screen. The violent slash through my name. The words "correct error" and "finalize" immediately written in Graham's distinctive block handwriting. A gasp went through the courtroom. This photo was taken at 8:15 in the morning on my birthday. I told the judge. While I was upstairs, my father and stepmother were meeting with a lawyer to remove me from their will. They were not planning a party. They were planning an eraser. They wanted to ensure that if anything happened to them, I would get nothing and everything would go to my stepmother and sister. Graham went pale. He hadn't known I had seen it. I didn't sell the house because I was crazy. I continued. I sold the house because I realized that the people living in it had already evicted me from their hearts. I just made the physical reality match the emotional one. This proves nothing. Sterling argued, though he sounded less confident. A draft will is not a crime. A father has the right to estate planning. True. Hart said. But a father does not have the right to embezzlement. The air in the room changed. It went from heavy to electric embezzlement. Judge Vance leaned forward. We are submitting a motion for forensic accounting. Hart said. And we are submitting Exhibit B. The screen changed. It was the spreadsheet I had built in my kitchen. The roof replacement invoice. The bank transferred to Obsidian Enterprises. Your Honor. Hart said. 6 months ago, Graham Caldwell withdrew $52,000 from the trust for a roof replacement that never happened. We have verified that the recipient, Obsidian Enterprises, is a shell company linked to a known private lender, a bookie. To be precise, Graham stood up again. His face was no longer pale. It was purple. That is a lie, he screamed. That was for the house I was managing the property. There is no new roof on the house, Mr. Caldwell. Hart said calmly. And we have 18 years of records showing withdrawals that match your personal credit card bills. Braces Hadley never had. Camps she never attended. Repairs that were never made. It's my money. Graham roared. The mask slipped completely. The grieving father vanished, replaced by the entitled parasite I had lived with for a decade. I am her father. I am the head of the house. What is hers is mine. I just borrowed it temporarily. I was going to pay it back. The courtroom went dead silent. You borrowed it? Judge Vance repeated slowly. You admitted to commingling trust funds with your personal debts. I raised her. Graham sputtered, realizing too late that he had just confessed to a felony in open court. I put a roof over her head. I deserved that money. It shouldn't go to some ungrateful brat who thinks she's better than us just because her grandmother liked her more. Patrice grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with terror. Graham. Stop, she hissed. She looked at the judge. Your Honor. Please. He is under stress. He doesn't mean it. We love Hadley. We just want to be a family again. Stop it. Patrice. I said. I didn't yell. I just spoke across the aisle. You don't want a family. You want a financier. Judge Vance said, looking at me with a new expression. Respect. Do you have anything else to add? Just one thing. Hart said. The final twist. He pulled a sealed envelope from his briefcase. The wax seal was broken, but the document inside was pristine. Your Honor. Hart said. This is an addendum to the original trust instrument drafted by June Caldwell and sealed until the event of a legal challenge. Graham froze. He stared at the paper like it was a snake. June Caldwell anticipated this exact moment. Hart said she knew her son better than anyone. This addendum states, should any beneficiary or family member attempt to legally challenge the trust's authority or attempt to coerce the trustee through litigation to release funds, that individual shall immediately forfeit any and all future claims to the residual estate. Furthermore, the trustee is instructed to pursue full civil liability for any funds previously misappropriated by said challenger. Hart dropped the paper on the table. It made a soft thud that sounded like a gavel. By filing this lawsuit, Hart said, looking directly at Graham, you have not only lost your case, you have triggered the clause that strips you of everything, and you have mandated us to sue you for every penny you stole. Graham sank into his chair. He looked like a balloon that had been popped. He looked at Patrice, but she pulled her hand away from him, physically distancing herself from the disaster. Belle put her face in her hands. They had gambled everything on breaking me, and they had lost the house, the money, and the future in a single hand. Judge Vance didn't need to deliberate. Motion to rescind sale is denied, she ruled.
Banging hergavl.
Motion for temporary conservatorship is denied with prejudice. I am granting the defendant's request for a full forensic accounting of the trust dating back to its inception. Mr. Caldwell. I strongly suggest you find criminal defense counsel because based on your admission in my courtroom today, the district attorney will be very interested in the transcript of this hearing. She looked at the family one last time. And let me be clear, Judge Vance said, her voice like iron. If any of you contact MS, approach her place of work, or harass her in any way, I will issue an immediate protective order. Leave her alone. She owes you nothing. Court is adjourned. The bailiff stood up. The room bustled with the noise of people leaving. Graham didn't move. He sat in his chair, staring at the empty table. He was a king without a kingdom, exposed as a thief in front of the people he tried to impress. Patrice stood up and looked at me. For a second, I thought she might scream, but she just looked tired. She looked at Graham with disgust, and I knew their marriage wouldn't survive the poverty that was coming. I didn't wait for them to speak. I picked up my bag. Thank you. Evan, I said to Hart. You did it, Hart said. It's over. I walked down the center aisle of the courtroom. I passed by the bench where Belle was sitting. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. Real tears this time. Hadley, she whispered. What are we going to do? I stopped. I looked at my sister. The sister who had sent the email to my boss. The sister who had watched me scrub floors while she went to camp. You are going to figure it out, I said gently. Just like I did. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped out into the hallway. The air outside the courthouse was cold and bright. The sun was shining. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. There were no new messages. No threats. No guilt trips. For the first time in months, the screen was silent. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the sharp, clean air of a Tuesday afternoon. It didn't feel like a movie. There was no swelling orchestra. There was no slow-motion walk. It just felt quiet. I had spent 18 years paying a tax on my own existence. I had paid with my labor, my money, and my self-worth. I had bought their love until I went bankrupt, only to realize the product never existed. But today, the transaction was closed. I walked toward the parking lot where my used gray sedan was waiting. I had a thermodynamics exam tomorrow. I had a shift at Stratus Arc on Thursday. I had a pizza date with my friends on Friday. I had a life. And for the first time, it was fully, completely, and irrevocably mine. That was a victory they could never buy back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this journey of justice and resilience, please let us know where you are tuning in from in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts and connect with you. Don't forget to subscribe to the HOA Karen VLOG channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people. Your support means the world.